with President Trump? Is this a summer swoon or is this the beginning of the end? And I know what you're thinking, beginning of the end, right? Little eye roll there. Because the economy has turned against him and all of his theories are starting to essentially blow up in his face. Yes, it's early. Yes, they're not ready to admit this, but there's something happening here. And I know, I know what you may think, there's always this prediction. Oh, this is going to end them, et cetera, et cetera. But let me set the stage here. And then we'll talk. And then you can give me your feedback at the end of my case here. So later this week, he marks day 200 in office. And I've been vacillating about this. Is he in the middle of just a summer swoon, which we've seen plenty of presidents go through? The summer is cruel in Washington, both in the humidity and to presidents. It's very often July and August suck politically for them. Part of it is you got cranky members of Congress and all of those things. And just, it can be bad. And people are sort of out to lunch. People aren't putting their best foot forward, even working because they're all thinking about their own vacations. You got kids starting school and all this stuff. So there's just a lot of distractions. So the opportunity to make mistakes happens quite a bit in July and August with these politicians. So there's a strong argument that we could, quote unquote, be in a summer swoon. But it's also possible that this is the beginning of the end of his presidency. Doesn't mean he won't serve all 4 years, but humor me here a minute. And I know some of you may roll your eyes up. That Trump derangement syndrome. Critics always want the fall to come. The TDS folks say, always looking for signs of a collapse. Ever since he insulted John McCain, that's the end of his political career, right? The critics been saying Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. But the fact is, he has, political reality has bitten him in the past, COVID, and political reality may bite him in the moment with the economy. And it happens to every president, particularly 7 second-term presidents. But let me tell you a fascinating trajectory that I think we're on here and why Trump and his political party, his allies, and his own strategists need to have a reality check here that this could end quickly. Let me take you back to August 2021. Basically, the exact moment we're in right now, 4 years ago. Joe Biden was riding high just before the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He had an approval rating over 50%, which in these days, that's like being in the 60s back in the 80s and 90s. The stimulus checks were out the door. People were happy about that. Promises made, promises kept on that one. The vaccines finally got out the door in a fairly smooth process. And then came Afghanistan. The decision to get out wasn't unpopular. That was very popular. Public wanted out, but it was the execution. It was chaotic. It was incompetent. And it was the kind of failure that sort of punched Biden in the gut because it hit him at a core perceived strength, right? Which was foreign affairs. There's one thing about Joe Biden's resume. It screamed that he had experience in foreign affairs. People may disagree with his takes, but he was a skeptic on Afghanistan early. So, he felt very, in a little ways, he felt a little cocky. I think many of his foreign policy mistakes were due to his own cockiness because his take ended up being right about Iraq and ended up being right about these things. So I think there was a lot of confidence that voters have that, hey, he's not going to screw that up. And then he screwed up. He screwed up his best subject, right? This was the core. This was the one thing voters didn't think they had to worry about with him was foreign affairs, and he screwed it up. And what that does when this is why political, those in the dark arts of politics like to go after, they always say, go after someone's perceived strength. You get rid of their you hit them, you undermine their perceived strength, and it's a house of cards after that, right? And it's like pulling the right leg out of and a right little wood block out of Jenga. All of a sudden, the whole thing comes crashing down. And he never recovered. He got under 45% and he never recovered. He had moments of sort of what turned out to be essentially dead cat bounces. The midterms were not about him, but he wanted to make it about him. He was trying to use it as a way to jumpstart his political problems, but he never recovered from that moment. He got his big bill passed, never recovered from that moment. It was this weight on him. And to me, it was proof that voters never bought Joe Biden. They voted for him. They hadn't really bought into him. What they did know is Donald Trump had to go. because his mismanagement of COVID was the fireable offense. And this is why he's got to be careful here. He has been able to bullshit his way out of all sorts of problems over the years. But every once in a while, when reality catches up to the Trump spin machine, it implodes on itself. COVID was a perfect example. He just couldn't talk the virus out of, he couldn't spin away from the virus. The virus was spreading. The bodies were piling up. He couldn't do it. He kind of knew it every once in a while. He hated to do what he had to do and listen to the health experts. And at the same time, he always quietly wanted credit for Operation Warp Speed. But, he just botched it all. And there was an incompetency to him. And so to me, it was understandable. Voters, and this was always the big mistake, right? Democrats think voters threw out Trump for all of his other misdeeds. No, they never have. They knew his misdeeds. And this is something we all have to sort of come to grips with, which is voters knew exactly who they were electing in 2016. Okay. And they voted for him anyway. So it was just like with Bill Clinton, why the Republicans, it kept going after character with Bill Clinton. The voters knew who they were electing in 1992. So those issues were baked in, right? He was going to get, they were mad when he messed up on the job itself. That's when they would turn on Bill Clinton. And I think that's what we're seeing here. We've seen him get out of all sorts of political problems, but they were political problems that the public already baked in. Screwing up the economy was the one core competency he's supposed to have. And if this is what makes this the most lethal problem he's got politically. Because if there is no credibility among voters on his ability to manage the economy, that's the Jenga piece that collapses the presidency. It's not Epstein. It's not, some, bad intelligence reports or the Pentagon or anything like that. It is pocketbook, right? It is how people feel about the economy. At some point, reality, he realizes people feel a crappy economy, right? And we're all seeing prices continue to rise. We all see that our neighbors' houses are staying on the market a lot longer than we thought it would. Everybody's experiencing what is, and we're now seeing all these companies raise this up. So, everything ends, look, the Trump era is going to end badly. I'm a believer in my line. I live by the mantra, everything ends badly or else it wouldn't end. It's a line from the movie Cocktail. The Trump era isn't going to end without pain. And it may be it's economic pain that sobers up folks and realizes that could be what brings because he is the dog that caught the car. He's had this belief in tariffs that goes back 40 years. And he's now throwing them around. I think he only loves it because it makes him kind of like a mob boss, right? Everybody has to pay a tribute to him. If you want to get a tariff exemption, you got to see the president. You want a lower tariff rate, you got to see the president. That everything comes through him. I think that's the other sort of reason he likes it, right? It consolidates power into him. So it's his. And the voters are going to know if the economy is bad, there's only one person to blame. And it ain't the chairman of the Federal Reserve.